Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports, the pollster who is attacked most for not towing the line. And that should tell you alone that we have information that's worth listening to. And let me tell you, we have a lot of worthwhile information today. In fact, this video has more Trump versus Kamala Harris numbers than we've ever released in any of our videos to date. We have over 5,000 national respondents for the 2024 race. Basically, what it boils down to is that Donald Trump is still beating Kamala Harris, although maybe not by as many points as he was beating Biden about 6 weeks ago. But if that's news for you, then basically it's because the entire polling industry is colluding with the mainstream media to create this false narrative that somehow Kamala Harris is now winning big and essentially running away with the 2024 race. And I'm here to tell you that nothing could be further from the truth. She's doing a little bit better bit by bit, but it's hard to say that she really has much in the way of momentum. But we're going to get into it in a lot of detail. But if you want to hear more from the most hated pollster in the entire industry, then take a moment to subscribe to us at YouTube or Rumble, and also follow us on Twitter at Rasmussen_poll, and I'm there as well at Mark_R_Mitchell. But before we get into everything today, I'm going to take a quick stop at this chart, and everybody knows this. This is the summation of all the individual nightly Trump versus Harris results. And this is something that you're absolutely not going to see from any other pollster. In fact, most pollsters right now are tripping over themselves to not report data. And we are literally showing every single respondent that we've ever asked about the 2024 election. So you can see the trend, and you can see that we are not hiding information. And it's very plain as day exactly what's happening here. You know, when she was announced as the candidate, she had a bounce and stole a lot of support from Donald Trump, but that abated in basically 3 or 4 days, and Trump rebounded to doing absolutely great. There was one night he got 52% of the vote and was beating her by 10 points. Now, she has bit by bit clawed herself up from the mid 40s to a couple of nights in the last week. She's gotten, 46, 47. The last 3 nights, she has tied Donald Trump in the individual overnight results. Now, these are rounded numbers, and I can say at least that last night's results, Trump was beating her by about 0.6 points, which is not a lot. But again, keep in mind that this is significantly better on a national scale by 6 to 7 points than what Trump was doing against Biden just 4 years ago. Now, it's tough to say where this chart will go from here. I'm sure everybody on the Democrat side was hoping for a huge bounce out of Kamala Harris's speech right now. But it seems like the news cycle has already been hijacked by the RFK endorsement of Donald Trump today. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. So into the polling. And here is poll number 1. This is the national results that accompanied the massive swing state poll that we did just over the last 10 days, sponsored by Numbers USA. And the reason we're going into this one first is that it was started sooner than the second one on the 13th. The second one was started on August 15th, and this collection went all the way up to August 20th. It's a poll of almost 2,600 U.S. likely voters, which is really large and gives it a margin of error of about 2 points. Now, these crosstabs will be released publicly soon so that you can go over in great detail all of the absolutely stunning and fascinating results. We also have individual state results and a combined swing state set of crosstabs. But a lot of fascinating stuff here about specifically immigration and the border. Is the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border a crisis? 62% say yes, only 26% say no. How likely is it that the increased illegal immigration in the past few years was purposely allowed by the Biden administration? And a massive, 62% of U.S. likely voters say at least somewhat likely, 45% say very likely, which is the same 45% who today would vote for Kamala Harris. But here we are with a two-way matchup. And if the 2024 presidential election were held today and the main candidates were Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, who would you vote for? And Donald Trump wins nationally 48% to 46%, a 2-point lead, and basically at the margin of error for this poll. He's doing worse with men in this poll, leading by 3 points, but better with women, actually leading here with women by 2 points. Now, you'll often see men and women swing back and forth. That's just part of what happens in our polling. But in general, Trump has had a bigger lead with men, getting close to 10 points, and has mostly been down with women. Now, in these crosstabs, we actually have age broken out in more granular buckets because the poll was so big. So here we're actually seeing 18 to 29-year-olds, and they're pretty based. Trump is only losing by 2 among the Zoomers. So I don't know if it's the TikTok videos or those live streams he's doing, but he's doing absolutely great. And he's doing even better among 30 to 39-year-olds and not doing quite as well among middle-aged voters as he does in other polling. In most of those polls, he's been leading by upper single digits, and he's been tied to losing among 65 and older voters, but here he's actually winning by 6 points. But on to the race results, and Trump is winning among white voters by double digits here, 10 points, better a little bit than he's been doing previously. He's getting 29% of the black vote, pretty much in the recent strike zone post-Biden of 25 to 30 points. He's losing among Hispanic voters by 2, and he's mostly been winning with them. But into the party numbers, and Trump has a slight crossover advantage here, and yet he's only winning by 5 among independent voters. That's actually his lowest lead in a long time. I think part of that's just the way this poll broke. You know, we get basically the same mix of conservative, moderate, and liberal, but here it looks like fewer conservatives call themselves independents and more of them call themselves Republicans, because this 86% is higher than Trump has done in our polling for almost all of this entire year. Now, we'll take a quick stop out farther in the crosstabs to show you that Donald Trump is winning massively amongst voters with high school diplomas and some college but no college degree. He's roughly tied among people who are college educated, but is losing massively among the educated elite, down 23 points amongst those with at least a graduate degree. But here's something fascinating we don't usually have. Are you a U.S. citizen? And I'll have to tell you, I think we're the only people in the industry interested in asking this question right now. I think most pollsters just pull from the registered voter files and assume that all those people are citizens, but we know from recent headlines that they actually are not. And although Trump is winning among people who say they are not U.S. citizens, it is a small subsample. There's probably a large margin of error. Kamala Harris is actually winning among people who are not sure whether they are U.S. citizens. But the takeaway here is that in this poll of almost 2,600 U.S. likely voters, a combined 121 voters, which is roughly 3% plus, say that they are not U.S. citizens, and they also say that they voted in the 2020 election. This is a really big number, 93% of them. So these people say they vote, and they say they're not citizens, and I think that's an important finding, and one that pretty much only me is bringing to everybody's attention. So if you like those kind of hot takes, again, please subscribe. Here are the results by religion. And also, this is a trend that most people in the industry are not going to talk about. Trump is actually blowing Kamala Harris out of the water among evangelical Christian voters by a stunning 31-point margin. He does much worse among Protestant voters, but is still winning by 7 points. He's up by 11 points among Catholics, but tied among Jewish voters, is actually winning among Muslim voters. I did not expect that. Big surprise. But who says they'll vote most for Kamala Harris? It's atheists by a stunning 83% to 9% margin, which, if you were paying attention, is a bigger lead than Kamala Harris had among Democrat voters. That's absolutely incredible. And she's also winning by a pretty solid 24 points among voters who say that they're something else or not religious or whatever. The same kind of trend holds up among how often people say they attend religious services. People who say they attend at least once a week go to Donald Trump by 20 points. And people who tend church less frequently give Trump a smaller lead, but they still give him a lead. Kamala Harris only wins among people who say they rarely or never attend church. It's almost like it's some kind of religious political battle. Fascinating. Now, here's the multi-way matchup, and Trump is actually leading more here by 3 points, up from 2 points. And the important point here is that Kennedy is now taking 5% of the vote. This is actually up from where it's been. It's been as low as 3 points recently. And none of these third-party candidates really are getting any support here, which kind of fits with how we've been viewing this election as essentially a Donald Trump versus the entrenched deep state political Armageddon. Who's going to vote for a libertarian in that kind of environment? Who's going to vote for the Green Party? Most of the demographics are similar. The party numbers look similar. Trump has a little bit more of a crossover advantage, but the lead among independent voters is now up from 5 points to 7 points. But what I want to point out here most is this Kennedy row. So today, just before I filmed this, RFK came out in an awesome speech. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it, and endorsed Trump and plans to work with Trump to help fix childhood health issues. Now, looking across the board here, he does better with women voters. That's important for Trump to do well with that demographic. And he does much better among younger voters, 18 to 39-year-olds. Again, those are people that Trump would absolutely love to have support him more. Normally, Kennedy does better with minority voters, but that's not the case in this poll. Let's keep an eye on them for the next poll we look at. And 8% of independents say they would vote for Kennedy. So again, I think that endorsement really helps Trump in areas where he would love to have more support. But let's get on to the next poll. This one was conducted starting August 15th and went all the way up until Wednesday night. This is our normal daily polling, and it's pretty similar. The poll's a little bit smaller. This represents 1 week worth of data. Now, I will say, because we're transparent, it's weighted slightly different than the other poll. The other poll, I had more data available. So not only did I weight by gender, age, race, and political party, I'm also balancing both of these polls to 2020 recalled vote, which if you're interested in hearing more about my opinions there, we can go into it in another video. But suffice to say, I think my polls are collecting too many Donald Trump supporters, and I'm correcting for it by weighting those results to how people say they voted in 2020. The New York Times came out on Sunday in a stunning article and said they think that they're collecting too many Biden supporters and that they are not correcting those results to the outcome of the 2020 election. So one of many reasons why I think that, we're unbiased, our business actually depends on us being accurate, unlike the New York Times. And that's probably the biggest way that our polls differ from everybody else. But the other difference is this poll here was targeted based on where people say they live, urban, suburban, rural. But the other poll was actually weighted by what we think the electorate should look like. But in any case, here we go with Donald Trump as of data, Wednesday, which includes a good chunk of the DNC. Donald Trump is beating Kamala Harris by 3 points. He's back up to 49%, almost at 50%. I mean, this is a clear, solid win, basically outside the margin of error. Here, he's doing better with men than in the last poll and is losing slightly among women, worse than the last poll, losing slightly among 18 to 39-year-olds, but doing much better among middle-aged voters. This is really the pattern that we've mostly been seeing this whole year. He's still winning big among white voters, but not quite as much, taking 28% of the black vote. So that's almost 5,000 respondents that tell us basically that Trump's taking 28, 29% of the black vote. That would be a really crushing outcome for Democrats. But here he's winning among Hispanic voters by 8%. Really huge. His crossover advantage by party is a little bit less, but he's winning here among independent voters by 11%. I mean, basically, a clear image is emerging of a solid and comfortable Trump national win. Here, he's doing a little worse in the multi-way matchup, only winning by 2 points, and Kennedy's doing worse, only getting 4% instead of 5%. And other than that, not a lot of differences here. Pretty much everything holds up. So two really big polls, really precise polls that both seem dialed in and kind of really within the same strike zone. Now we're going to hit a few slides now that we've gone through the crosstabs. This is all of the Trump versus the Democrat polling from the 2024 cycle. And as you can see here quite clearly, the results were all over the place until really political season started to heat up. And already Democrat support was kind of congealing, even going back to April and May, long before Joe Biden dropped out of the race. Kamala Harris has only been here for about 5 or 6 of these data points, and her support still is increasing, but Trump is still comfortably, 49, 50%. He dropped down to 48% once. He's back up to 49%. Although I will say for the first time since back in the beginning of May, the margins of error have overlapped. Now, here's that same polling, but looking at the 5-period moving averages. And we do this to smooth out all of the back and forth in the data. And it also shows how we did in 2016 and 2020. Trump, again, is still comfortably up in the high 40s, but you can see Kamala Harris's support surging here. Now, it's not as steep as it appears in this chart. Part of what's happening is that in the 5-period moving averages, all of Biden's old horrible polls are dropping off one at a time, and she's really doing 45, 46%. So this is going to start to level out. But the biggest thing to see here, besides the fact that we were dead accurate in 2016 and a point and a half too left in 2020, is that in the previous cycles, the blue line dominated and was on top, and the red line has been increasing its support year after year and is now dominating the blue line. It's pretty stark when you look at it this way. Donald Trump is winning the national popular vote, which is a crushing upset for the Democrats. Here are some interesting demographics to look at. This is the 5-period moving averages of the Hispanic population. And as you can see, Kamala Harris is doing better since Joe Biden dropped out of the race. But it's hard to say that she's taken a lot of support from Trump, the red line. And what I can say is that Donald Trump is doing better than in any of the previous cycles. The red line's higher, but really Kamala Harris is doing worse than Hillary Clinton did by far, and quite a bit worse than Joe Biden did 4 years ago. Here are the 18 to 39-year-old results, and it's a little hard to see in the last chart, but the blue line has shot up to meet the red line in the last data point or two. So 18 to 39-year-old voters are pretty jazzed to have a new Democrat candidate, most likely because Joe Biden was old and decrepit. But still, it's a neck-and-neck race among 18 to 39-year-olds. And look how left-leaning those people were way back in 2016. Hillary Clinton crushed Donald Trump among 18 to 39-year-olds by like 25 points. That's ridiculous that they're tied right now. And finally, black voters. Again, we have absolutely no expectation that Trump will win among black voters, and they are also quite happy to have a new candidate, as you can see by how that blue line is now surging up into the mid-60s when it was pretty much stuck in the low 50s. But those people mostly came from third-party and not sure results, because that red line is pretty solid at low 30s to upper 20s. And year over year, Donald Trump has been adding black support. He was in the teens in 2016, the mid-20s 4 years ago and is now broken into the 30s. That is a massive movement. And if Democrats are watching this video, this is the one here that will keep them up. Now, two other quick slides. This is from the video we put out earlier this week going into the individual swing state results. This slide shows all 7 states that we polled, and we did add Montana and Ohio. And sorry for Georgia folks, but the client didn't want Georgia. And what this shows here is that Trump is outperforming every Republican Senate candidate, yes, even in Montana, by an average of roughly 9 points. And here's my call to the Republican Party. If you want to give Trump control of the Senate, you better get your act together right now, because this is so horrible that everybody's looking at this and asking, where are you at? What are you doing? Where's the money going to? And are you trying to lose this race? But we did a swing state poll, and here are the results. Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And every single one of these results is within the margin of error. Trump is either tied up 1 to 2 points or down 1 to 3 points. His worst state is Michigan. And it makes sense to me that that is his worst state here. Harris is only winning by 3 points here in the 6-way question, and that is at the margin of error. But the reason I'm showing this slide is because a lot of times I get the question, how come you show Donald Trump up so high nationally, but you have him tied at a swing state level? And here's my response to that. Polling is an art, not a science. And when you try and make it accurate, you really have to pick a target. And for our target, what we're trying to base our polling on to make it accurate is the national popular vote. And I can tell you right now, in the national popular vote, Donald Trump is doing roughly 7 to 8 points better than he was doing 4 years ago in our polling. And what everybody remembers is that back in 2020, Donald Trump was roughly tied in the official results in the swing states. But in our polling, he was actually down really big. Donald Trump actually outperformed the polls, even our polls, in the swing states. So what I'm showing you here is the 2020 change from where we had Donald Trump 4 years ago. And I will say that Arizona was a bit of an outlier. If you put the other 2 polls we did of Arizona this year here, the trend would be pretty similar. And that's that in every one of these swing states, Donald Trump is doing 6 to 7 points better in our polling than he was 4 years ago. And so what is most accurate to say probably is that our polling in the states probably leans a little too left. And why is that? Well, everybody was surprised by how well Donald Trump did in the swing states 4 years ago. But one election doth not a trend make. And listen, if I'm going to err, I'm sorry, everybody calls me a conservative pollster. If I'm going to err, I'm going to err on the side of Democrats, to be honest with you. And so there's a really good chance that Donald Trump is going to do better in the swing states than our polling suggests. Now, I'm going to try and dial it in as we go into the swing states in September and October. But I'm telling you to your face what's happening, and the New York Times is using some ivory tower argument to explain why you should totally be fine with the fact that they're really oversampling Democrats by a lot and not waiting by, really, in my opinion, the one key variable that would fix their numbers and make it look a lot like ours, which we think are accurate. Because again, a lot's changed, but in our polling, the numbers haven't really shifted much. The numbers kind of just slimed their way from Trump beating Biden by 5 or 6 points to now Trump beating Kamala Harris from 2 to 3 points. We didn't see the massive shift left that every other pollster claims to be seeing, which is why we'll take a moment to stop in on the Real Clear Politics aggregate. And you can see that we are no longer alone here. We have Trump up 3 here, but Fox News has Trump up 1. Harris came out with Trump up 2. CNBC, Trump up 2. But what is really interesting is we called this out 2 weeks ago. All the pollsters were running from their duty and hiding polls. And really, I'm just looking at the number of results here. There are not that many polls out. There are way less polls now than there were in July and June. It's like all of a sudden they anointed Kamala Harris and the entire polling industry got super uncurious. And that was enough in the beginning of August to flip the betting markets because a flood of positive Kamala Harris polling came out, and then everybody just ran and hid. It was absolutely incredible. But when you look at the trend here, this is not what we saw. I mean, we had Trump, 48%, fine, close enough. They have Trump dumping a point and a half, and then just staying there. But we saw in our numbers, Trump's support pop back up. Where's that shape here? And then here, Kamala Harris had a surge after Biden, but they have this steady uptick up. They have the aggregate has Kamala Harris getting 48% of the vote. We've never seen a number higher than 47% for her. So I don't know where these people are getting it. Now, actually, we do kind of know because on my Twitter feed, I've talked about it. Rich Barris also has too. There's a lot of real scumbag tricks going on in the industry right now to give Kamala Harris a positive, to give Kamala Harris winning headlines. But I'll give you two responses to that. One, with all of these, in my opinion, Democrat oversampled polls, Kamala Harris is only up 1.5 points. And if you look at 4 years ago, that's 6.5 points worse than Joe Biden was doing. And Joe Biden only, won with less than 120,000 votes in the swing states. And number two is if you look at the Polymarket betting site now, and also in Real Clear Politics betting, this was fascinating. Trump was winning back when Kamala Harris was selected. But back in the beginning of August, when the polling industry was helping the mainstream media fabricate a Kamala Harris winning narrative, the Polymarket odds actually swung in Harris's favor. But now that it's the week of the Democrat National Committee, everybody said that this would be her high watermark. And we've seen here that the polls still overwhelmingly favor her. But what's incredible is the Polymarket betting odds and also the Real Clear Politics betting odds have flipped back in Trump's favor again without positive Trump polling, which tells me that people who are putting their money on the line do not believe the polling industry and do not think Kamala Harris is winning. Now, I think that this is a pretty packed video, but there's one special thing that I'd love to close out on. Now, I just started Twitter about 2 months ago, and it's been a fun experience for sure, airing my opinions. And let me tell you, I do have opinions, but what separates me from others in the industry is that I think humans have biases, but that polling should not. But anyways, I posted this tweet. I just finished processing our massive combined swing state poll. And again, 3% of likely voters who plan to vote this year in the swing states said that they were not U.S. citizens. And this is in a poll that basically had Trump and Harris tied. So my point here is that 3% is a very meaningful number. And then Keith Olbermann, formerly of MSNBC and now, I guess, of his basement, stopped by my humble X feed to post this cogent and substantive rebuttal to my factual post. But you work for Rasmussen, so you are by definition a lying idiot. Now, let me tell you, I'm actually honored that he would spend the time posting in my replies. And if you have some free time, I'd love for you to stop over to this tweet here and thank Keith Olbermann for his contribution to the discussion about fraudulent voting in our elections. So that was a lot to cover, but I think things are really starting to heat up. And if you ask me right now, what should we be looking at? I think the answer is what these numbers look like Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Because what we have now is two competing narratives. We had Kamala Harris's DNC speech, which many are painting to be the next Gettysburg Address. And then we have that really incredible endorsement by RFK of Donald Trump, where he basically curb stomped the Democrats. He essentially accused Kamala Harris and the Biden administration of turning a blind eye while the medical and food industry murdered children. It was really fascinating to watch, and you should check it out. So if you want to see those numbers, make sure you, again, follow us here on YouTube and at Twitter. And thanks for watching.